I'm Joel Baez, and this is The Process. Now, in today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys about what business has exposed to me since owning a brick and mortar gym within the last 3 years. And the two categories I want to cover are my lack of connection with people and my emotional immaturity. All right, now before I dive in deeper, go ahead and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I'm pretty much documenting my entire journey, the wins, the losses, and all the real and raw in these videos. All right, so make sure to subscribe. Let's get to it. Now, the first thing I want to talk to you guys are the connection that I had coming out of prison and what I struggled with when building those bonds and relationships. Now, if you saw my first video, I gave a full backstory of who I am, the type of testimony that I had, which was being incarcerated for about 6.5 years in prison, 13 months in juvenile detention hall. And the reason why I give that type of context is because this is what made it very difficult for me to have that connection with people once I was released from prison, therefore affecting my leadership within business. All right, so whenever I got released, I've experienced a lot of awkwardness in my personality. I felt insecure about my lack of education, and I also didn't really have much life experience. And it made it very difficult for me to build bonds and connections with people because I couldn't relate to their educational level, right? I dropped out of high school, so I felt like we couldn't find common ground there. While I was in prison, most of our conversations were based off of drugs, the streets, prison politics. So I felt like the only thing I knew how to talk about when I got released was about my personal experience, which was around those things, which I felt as if the normal person in society doesn't think or have those type of conversations. So I felt very out of place. And therefore, anytime I was around certain people or just people in general, I felt more quiet, more reserved, and didn't really want to build a bond or connection with them because I didn't have that type of experience that they had, right? So it became very, very, very difficult for me to build a bond and connection with people. All right. Now, when it comes to the education, when I spoke with people that had college degrees, graduated from high school, right, I felt very insecure in those type of conversations because I knew I dropped out of high school. And at that point in my life, I was out of prison doing personal training from my mom's garage, right? So I felt like I was living under my mom's roof. I have no life experience. I have no high school education. And I felt like I couldn't really move up or relate in that way. And it made it very hard to have those type of relationships with people. So the lack of connection was definitely exposed as soon as I started owning and operating a gym, because I know that owning a service-based business, there needs to be connection. There needs to be a bond, right? Especially if you're serving people, right? So that was something I had to learn very quickly, because if not, I knew my business was going to fail. So what I did in this situation when I got released was I got very uncomfortable and I forced myself to be in larger group settings despite how I felt, despite what other people might have thought of me, because I knew what that was going to do for me in the long run and for my business, right? So I intentionally put myself in larger groups. We had game nights, we went to parties, we went out to bigger social settings, conventions, things that I knew were going to make me very uncomfortable, but eventually with time I was going to start building that skill and experience, so I had more and more things to connect with people about, right, and have conversations. I also had to learn the type of questions to ask people, right? And I know this might seem like very basic or minute, but for me at this time, that was not my norm and that wasn't basic for me. That took a lot of work and effort for me to know what type of questions to ask people to build a regular conversation that eventually led to a connection. All right. So those are the few things I did to make sure that I was working on myself and working with building that bond and connection with people. And the more life experience that I started to build and have, the easier I found it to start connecting with people. And now to this day, connection has not been a problem for me. I own a brick and mortar gym. I see around 200 plus people a day, and I know every single person's name within our studio, and we have full-blown conversations every single day within the 3 years that I was there, right? But I'm not saying it was easy. It took a very long time, and even to this day, I'm still learning and growing in that area. But it is a constant thing that I'm focusing on to build better connections and rapport with people. All right, so that was the first thing, was the lack of connection that I had with people was definitely exposed when I started owning a business, because, when people would come in, I felt like I couldn't connect or bond, and therefore that awkwardness personality started to come out. Right now, the second thing, and I think this was probably my hardest one, and even to this day it's still a work in progress, was the emotional immaturity. All right, and I say that because anger always overcame my thoughts and my decision making. As you own a business and you're dealing with people, and you're leading a team, there's a lot of uncomfortable things that happen, a lot of hard conversations that you have to have. And for someone who struggles with anger, it was hard for me to be empathetic. It was hard for me to be supportive. It was hard for me to have that care in my heart for that person, because my anger overrided my thoughts at that time, especially when certain situations happen. So therefore, as a result, I wasn't making the most rash decision. And sometimes I've had team members quit. I've had team members go off on me. I had a lot of hard things happen because of my emotional immaturity. Right? So that was definitely an area I knew I needed to work on, because my brain was wired from the streets that when someone offends you or someone disrespects you or says something that might hit at your ego, your immediate response was to react in a violent way, right? Or say something in an aggressive manner, right? And that was always has been my thought process, my mindset on a lot of things. And obviously, when owning a business, dealing with people, if you go in there with that mindset, you're going to taint your relationships. People are not going to want to be around you, and you're going to destroy your business. So I knew immediately that needed to be an area I worked on, because I am just going to, if I plan on trying to build connections with people, this is definitely not the way. All right. So, what I did in this time was trying to really think before I act, despite how I felt at the moment, just taking longer breaks, deeper breaths, and sometimes even circling back to those conversations once I'm in a rational place, right? Sometimes there are conversations that might come across that might rub you the wrong way, but it's always best, if you know you might say or do something dumb, pause, let the person know, let's revisit this conversation. I am not in the best headspace. Let's go ahead and circle back where I am feeling more rational, and then we can have this conversation, and therefore you can start making more logical moves and decisions. And that has been my shift from anger, right? Is now working on those little things and being very cautious that my mind and my thoughts want to go one way, but I need to be in control of those thoughts and learn to be able to have rational decision making in my brain. Now, with that being said, as a result of that, I would say to this point, I've had improved a lot in my connection, my emotional management with people, and that has made my team bond a lot stronger. It had made my relationships with people in our gym or even outside of our gym a lot stronger. And again, I am not perfect. This is an area I'm still constantly working on, because we're talking about decades of habit that I'm trying to build and rewire my brain to overcome that, right? But I would say my gym has definitely been a huge impact to how I see myself and how I improve myself, because it does exploit a lot of the deficits, right? And I always came from a background where I want to be a strong leader. I would say my worst critic. So I love growing. I love improving. So anytime I can see what I need to work on, or I get exposed of that, or somebody gives me feedback on my leadership or something I'm doing, I'm always open to it and try my best to see how can I avoid that from happening and what can I do currently to improve those things, right? So just wanted to share that with you, because if you are someone who owns a business, I think it's very important, in my opinion, to always be critiquing yourself and seeing what are areas that you can improve to be a better owner, a better leader, a better team player, a better person in general. So that way you could live more of a healthier, fruitful life, and be the best in your business, right? So if you are someone in that position, always ask for feedback, always be willing to grow, and let's continue on this process. All right. Don't expect perfection. Just keep striving for perfection, and eventually you'll start seeing that improvement in yourself as well. So with that being said, thank you all so much. Again, this channel is going to be me being open, honest of my wins, my losses, what I plan on doing moving forward, the decisions that I plan on making. So if you like today's video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. This is our third video here for this YouTube channel, which is This is the Process. All right. So if you want to continue seeing that, go ahead and click that subscribe button, and I'll see you on our next video. Peace.